Shearling leather is the hide of a sheep that is tanned with the fleece still intact. It has a soft, suede surface on one side and that kind of fur wool on the other. It is a really popular choice for leather products due to its soft and supple texture, and it's also known for its fine grain and lightweight feel, and it is used in the fashion industry for jackets, coats, boots, gloves, bags, accessories, and the cozy rugs. Let's take a quick look into the history of shearling leather. So the history of sheep leather dates back to at least 500 BC, as a mummy in Subashi, China was found wearing a pair of sheepskin leather boots. Due to its insulating properties, the material was used very often for clothing, footwear, and shelter, especially in colder climates. Ancient Greek records, including writings by Plato, mention the use of warm felt and sheepskin for wrapping feet during harsh winters, indicating the early use of shearling leather. And shearling leather boots were worn in Tibet during the 19th century, and in Arctic regions, including the Inuit communities. Sheepskin was used to make warm boots such as kamapak or marnugwak, which were often waterproofed. Russian peasants in the winter wore high boots lined with sheepskin for insulation. And in the 20th century, the Quaker firm Morelands in Glastonbury produced sheepskin boots that gained popularity, especially for open-top vehicles. They were even used by the Everest expedition led by Sir Edmund Hillary in 1953. Even further, sheepskin jackets, helmets, and boots became essential for aviators, particularly during World War I. Major Leno Hawker designed thigh-length sheepskin flying boots, known as fug boots, which were later replaced by more advanced designs. Something you may be really familiar with, soft, slip-on sheepskin boots, known as Ugg boots, were developed in Australia around the late 1900s. These became really popular among surfers for keeping their feet warm after surfing in the cold water. The Ugg Australia brand also gained international fame, especially in the United States. So today, we see shearling used often, primarily in the fashion industry for items, and it also remains a popular choice for winter garments due to its insulating properties, soft texture, and unique look and feel. So let's check out really close that unique look and feel of shearling leather. So here we've got the top. And typically, if we're looking at leather really close, we're going to see, you guessed it, leather. But here, you notice it's different. We're seeing all those fibers of that shearling, of that wool, those little hair fibers here on top. And they're very fine, very soft, and they have a relatively uniform look and feel. Obviously, if you were to run your hand across this, it would feel, really soft and fluffy in texture. Looking at the bottom, we see a more open grain pattern here in that leather itself. As expected, it would be pretty fuzzy, and it's a little different than other leathers in that, say like a typical vegetable tan leather, the fibers may be a little rougher, a little thicker. Even here, they're going to be, as you see, a little smaller, a little finer, and even a little softer to the touch. And a great view into this section. So this is interesting because if we look, we see your typical leather layers, right? There's even that, if we look at the full grain of it, there's that top layer. Visually, it's in the middle of this, but you can see the color difference there. And that's going to be what's usually that dense, tight layer of fibers on the surface. And then we kind of go down. But obviously, this is different. And what's that difference? All those hair fibers on top. That kind of that wool, those tiny little soft fibers. You could see that, very clearly here. It's that kind of lighter colored fluffy layer that's right above what would typically be the top layer. So it's cool because we could really see how that looks. And often that hair layer on top can be trimmed so it's even. And then as we move down further into the leather, you see that fiber pattern open up as is typical within leather. But it's really cool to see a cross section of, how thick that hair layer is versus the leather layers below it. For the production process, shearling leather follows pretty much a similar tanning process to other leathers. The key difference is in the beginning, that wool, that hair is not removed from the hide. It is kept on. It can be trimmed to an even length, and that way you've got a uniform looking, finished piece of material. And then at that point, depending on the desired characteristics for the finished hide, that leather can either be vegetable tanned or it can be chrome tanned. And in some cases, it will be both. And whereas vegetable tanning requires soaking it in natural plant or tree tannins for an extended period of time, results in a stiffer leather. When chrome tanning, where the leather is soaked in chromium salts, typically faster than vegetable tanning, and results in a softer, more flexible leather. So after the leather is tanned, there can be some finishing applications applied to it, especially given that it has that wool surface. So in some occasions you could have water resistant protectants applied or things like that, but in a lot of times it's just kept natural, so you could really feel and see and get to interact with that original wool surface. For cost, we see around $5 to $13 per square foot for shearling leather. And the key variables that are going to relate to that are going to be the quality of the hide, the quality of the hair, the color of the hair, its texture, and the quality of the tanning process, if it was vegetable tan or chrome tan, and how the tannery did it. And if there's any kind of finishing or other types of steps applied to it at the end, colorants, dyes, patterns, things like that, that can really contribute to that range. So you could surely find it less expensive, probably find it more expensive, but in general, you'll see around $5 to $13 per square foot for shearling leather. A few of the pros are that it is very warm. Given that it has that layer of wool on top, you get it, it's going to be super toasty, but it's also going to have breathability as well. Like, it won't always be, incredibly hot. It can also be used in warmer temperatures for different purposes. It's definitely a flexible material, and it's also a very soft material. And along with that, it has a unique visual aesthetic to it. So depending if you want to use that in your project only for its physical properties, or you want to create a unique look that still has leather as its base, this could be a great option for that. A few of the cons, it can be more expensive than other leathers, simply because it does have that wool layer on top, and there's definitely value to that. And because of that wool layer, it can be a little trickier to maintain. It's not overly complex, but you also have to maintain those wool fibers as well as the leather underneath. And so it's going to be kind of a two-step process for maintenance rather than the typical, singular leather care process. Some good uses for it include actually a lot of things. We've got gloves, jackets, coats, slippers, boots, blankets, even, some upholstery in smaller applications, seat covers, seat pads, and even other types of clothing, that you could use it for linings, and things like that. And, certainly rugs and, home decor applications. So there's certainly a lot you could do with it. It's a relatively versatile material, and it's been around, literally for hundreds and thousands of years of use. A few tips for working with shearling leather. In this case, it's great to have really sharp tools because you're now cutting, through leather and also the wool on top. And so it's going to be easy to bind onto less sharp tools and kind of snag. So keeping a good blade will give you nice, clean cut lines. And then also, when you are going to be sewing with it or marking it or anything, consider how you're going to mark the back of it rather than the front. Because that hair is on top, it's going to block a lot of that working space that would typically use for, putting in chisel holes for stitching and things like that. So typically you want to mark the back of this and then just factor in any variations in your techniques that you may have to account for, given that that wool is on the top. So there you have it, a look into shearling leather. It's a really classic leather with a really noticeable look. It can be great for a lot of applications and create some really, special looks depending on how you use it and what type of goods that you use it for. So if you're looking to explore this, it can definitely be worth a try and result in some really great looking leather goods.